What is going on, everyone? Nathan coming at you with a video on Landorus-Therian here today. It is a very new Pokemon. It just got released to Scarlet and Violet from Pokemon Home, new to Showdown this generation. And I think while we all know how to use Landorus, there's been a lot of talk, of course, about the nerfs it's received and how its role has changed. It is no longer the same role compression god, which if you don't know what that means, we're going to explain that a little bit later. But it's changed to be a different Pokemon. It is, of course, greatly nerfed. Everybody's talking about, myself included, how this is not going to be the same Pokemon that runs the tier all, across the entire generation and going to be having an insane usage stats of 40 to 50% usage. That's gone. But just because that's the case doesn't mean this is a useless Pokemon. I guarantee it's still going to see really high use. It's still going to be a good OU Pokemon, but it's different. And that's what the point of today's video is going to be, is explaining how to use it most effectively in Overused, how to take advantage of the good traits it still has going for it. As a quick sort of recap, if you aren't familiar with what it lost and what made it really like the face of competitive Overused since arguably Black and White came out, it's going to come down to one of these two sets. We'll talk about them both. But Earthquake, U-Turn, knockoff superpower. It could also be Stone Edge. It could also be Toxic, honestly. It could also be another utility move like Stealth Rocks or Defog. But we'll just do superpower because it's lost and we're kind of dunking on it right now, right? It is a Pokemon with great defenses, an insane attack stat, insane speed stat. I don't need to go too far into why it was. Ground Flying is the best defensive stat, or sorry, the best defensive typing in Pokemon, period. And you combine a 100 base power Earthquake with this ridiculous attack stat. Yeah, it was hitting really hard. And with this solid base 91 speed tier and Choice Scarf, it was an excellent cleaner that can come to the late game and finish stuff off very neatly. Knockoff was great utility too, because before it lost the move Knockoff, if I didn't know what my opponent was going to go to, if I was like, they could go to this, or they could go to this, I could like Stone Edge if they go to a flying type, I could like Earthquake if they go to a grounded type, I don't know what to click. Knockoff is always going to put in work. It's really strong too, of course, but it's going to cripple your opponent in a sense that it's going to lose its important item. More recently, we saw a lot more usage of the defensive format, where you can take advantage of its great utility moves. We've already talked about Knockoff, but Defog is essential, especially Gen 6 onwards. You can also run Stealth Rocks, can also run Toxic. These were a really key part of Landorus' moveset. Both of these sets, you'll see U-turn, so it can pivot in and out and maintain momentum. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But yes, with Defog and Knockoff, it is no longer the same defensive threat it was before. And without Knockoff, it loses that sort of universality. Even Superpower to an extent too. Like Steel types are going to give him a little bit more trouble. Certainly Corviknights and Skarmory if it was in the generation. But with Knockoff, it's not this sort of universal answer that it used to. It's just forced to U-turn on stuff endlessly. Nowadays, might seem a little bit different, but the point of Landorus has always been the role compression that it offers, right? I've said this many times, but if I'm on a team builder and there's so many threats in Pokemon, there's so many great Pokemon I want on my team, there's so many great Pokemon I want to account for on my opponent's team that I can be able to answer defensively, how do I do all that? It's the fundamental question of Pokemon, is having a limited amount of things to fit on your team, and you want to make the most out of every slot possible. And Landorus is the god of that. It always has been. With its typing alone, you get a ground immunity, you get a electric immunity. Boom, that's two huge defensive check marks out the gates. You get a Pokemon that can intimidate and shore up your defensive weaknesses and like lower your opponent's attacking stats. Even helps when opponents are sweeping up. In this case, you have a Scarfer in one slot. It's a pivot, it's a strong Earthquaker. It's covering all these roles. On this one, hell, if you do this instead, you are checking off so many roles. Again, same ground flying typing. You have Defog, you have Stealth Rock. That is arguably 4 different Pokemon in one slot. It's an exaggeration, of course. It's not going to be really the case. But the comparison I always use is, if Landorus was not in the game last generation, we would have seen a lot more Hippowdon, which is just a bulky stealth rocking ground type. Boom. Landorus does that for us. And a lot of Tornadus, which is a pivot that can come into the game, U-turn out, defog, and keep hazards off the field. Landorus does that too. So it's Tornadus and Hippowdon blended into one Pokemon, and literally doubling the amount of, not doubling, that's not right, giving us a whole extra Pokemon slot to work with instead of devoting it to those two Hippowdon and Torn there, right? So that's the basic idea. Role compression god. Out that, it is just a good role compressor. Its typing is still helpful for that respect, but it's not the same. Perhaps more importantly than when it's lost is what it's being compared to nowadays. The meme all generation has been that this Great Lusk is Landorus Mini. It's Walgreens Landorus. But in the wake of the loss of Defog, if I have to choose the choice between these two, in a generation that is so extremely dominated by hazards, and Golden Goat's Pokemon that can prevent you from moving hazards off the field, the Great Tusk is always going to take the advantage from me, because Rapid Spin is better than ever. It boosts my speed, makes me like a threatening sweeper at this respect too. But it's going to be able to remove hazards off the field, which is so essential. That's why I have this Pokemon in the first place. Still a really bulky ground type. It doesn't have Intimidate. It just has similar physical defenses just based off of its high defenses. So it's kind of pros and cons. It depends if your opponent is swapping out or staying in, right? On whether you want the high defense or you want to intimidate them and then pivot out. But still really strong. Does have knockoff too. So it's kind of like everything that Landorus wishes it had right now, or wishes it used to have. Great Tusk has instead. And perhaps more importantly also, if you're going to go with an offensive Pokemon, like an offensive sweeper type, Great Tusk has been in that respect too. It's got Headlong Rush, which is even stronger than Earthquake. It's got Close Combat, which is a fantastic dual typing offensively. Flying Ground is a good dual typing too offensively, don't get me wrong. You can make the case that this should be Terra Flying, Terra Blast, Landorus. That's a valuable move slot to give up. Great Tusk can just do that off the rip with a Close Combat, really strong. Arguably, in terms of just pure offense, you make the case it's even better than a Ground Flying as a dual offensive typing. And then with one wrap, it's been not only removing hazards off the field, but you're becoming immediately threatening. And Bulk Up pairs with its incredible defenses. But once again, Intimidate, I think you'd rather have Intimidate and lower defense on Landorus than Great Tusk having higher base defense and no Intimidate, if you had a choice between the two. But situations like this where you're staying in and your opponent's gonna be pivoting out and not gonna be retaining that Intimidate effect, if that's the case, then you actually want the higher base defense of Great Tusk here. So Bulk Up is actually better suited to its kit. So it's a really fearsome setup sweeper. It still gets the job of being this pivot that removes his hazards off the field and is a physical ground type. But like, you know, if you're not careful, boom, it's setting up and now it's sweeping your whole team before you're ready for it, right? Landorus doesn't have that same versatility to it. Now, that is the difference between the two. This is a better setup sweeper. It's a better wall breaker too. You can just send this thing in with a choice banded Close Combat and it 2 KOs even a defensive Corviknight. Like that's something that Landorus could never ever do. Maybe nowadays if you do Terra Blast Electric, but I didn't really give it that much thought. So it can do that whole aspect to it, like, you know, setup sweeper, wall breaker, whereas Landorus now and always is more of a scarfer. It can just come in and scarf and pivot and do its own thing, but they're different. So this is all a long point leading towards saying that Landorus, yes, it got nerfed in the sense of it lost important moves and it lost a lot of the roll compression that made it just that high usage god. Like I don't think we're going to see the same usage from it just because there's less things I want it to do. Like the way I think of it is if it had 30% usage last generation a month, so 30% of games included a Landorus, which is staggeringly high. Maybe 10% of that is going to be a scarfer. Maybe 10% of that is going to be a defensive set. And maybe 10% of that is going to be a more aggressive wall breaking set, right? Like you're not just saying no. If you say no to, you know, a Scarf Lando, you also have to say no to all the defensive variants of it too, right? Like there's so many different ways to make room for it on your team is what I'm saying. That's not the case anymore. It's much more limited. There's gonna be less like chances and less team structures that are gonna be open for Landorus going forward. But the other main thing that it lost, like I'm reiterating here, is just there's several aspects of it. If I want a defensive pivot that's controlling his hazards, then I prefer the Great Tusk. But that's enough talking for now. I want to demonstrate a couple things that Landorus still does really well. They're still extremely effective. It's going to give it the edge on Tusk here. Its ground flying typing, its intimidate aren't going away anytime soon. So the thing is always going to have a role in the metagame. That's something that I underestimated early on. So in this first replay we're going to look at, we got this King Gambit against Urshifu here. We don't really have an easy answer on the team. It's one of the best setup sweepers in the game right now. I'm actually going to do a video on it soon, kind of talking about why it slept on. But more importantly, like, Iron Treads dies to anything, dies to close combat, dies to surging strikes. At this percent with Swords Dance with spikes up, dies to surging strikes, dies to surging strikes. So there is no answer right now. There's no play. You're about to get swept 6-0 by Urshifu, sorry, right? Or at least you have to sack the Pokemon because Dragapult could come into revenge kill. But once again, it can't swap in right now cleanly. So you're just forced to give up a Pokemon, which is probably Iron Treads. In this situation, it's a bit of a flawed situation because Iron Treads would be the obvious play here. But let's pretend that it's at 100%. You don't want to waste it, right? Here's a play you can do. You go to Landorus. You know the close combat's coming. You go for it. Get the close combat. Thanks to Rocky Helmet, you're actually getting chip 2, which is really nice. And with that lowered attack, now you can go to Dragapult successfully, come in the surging strikes, and attack it back. So this is the sort of obvious stuff with the plays with this defensive typing, which are so versatile. And with Intimidate, what it allows you to do is create circumstances like this where you can like relieve pressure on your team. That's not changing anytime soon. I think it's why defensive Landorus is still probably the better of the two. Another good example though is why it's, I think, such a pivotal, that's a poor choice of words or a great choice of words, offensive pivot nowadays, right? I think a lot of the utility of it as a defensive pivot is kind of lost now that you can't come in and remove hazards and spread status and knock off the same way. Whereas offensive pivot is as good as ever. And I think a lot of people don't really understand the difference between defensive and offensive pivots. It's a very thin line, to be sure. It's kind of like in the eye of the beholder, arguably. But the way I think of it is a defensive pivot would be something like a Corviknight or something like a Rotom Wash, where I'm coming in and I'm not forcing a swap, or I'm not creating momentum or breathing room for my team for any other reason than just I'm bulky and you can't really break me right now. So if I have a, you know, a choice scarfed walking wake that's attacking my Rotom Wash, it's gonna do like 15-20% per attack. There's no point for the walking wake to stay in at that point because it's just not doing enough damage. It's just you're wasting turns. Or a better example might be, you know, Great Tusk. This kind of Great Tusk. If it's against a Corviknight, there's no point. The Corviknight is a great defensive pivot. It's forcing a swap just because there's literally nothing that Tusk can do in this situation to really, you know, there's no reason to stay in. Whereas an offensive pivot is very different and it forces a swap because it's threatening to kill you. So we're gonna see an example of that right here, where we're gonna go to Landorus on the King Gambit here. King Gambit is trying to Sucker Punch there on the Dragapult, but even if it had gone for an optimal like Kowtow Cleave, it would have been like 30% because of this Intimidate. So now again, this is no matter what the investment is, this Landorus has 145 attack, super strong Earthquake. You're forcing a swap and you go for a U-turn. The U-turn is because like there's no way the opponent stays in here. It's not risky. The opponent could like predict the U-turn from Landorus, sure, and go for a Kowtow Cleave here instead. They can predict this U-turn is coming and go for a Kowtow Cleave or an Iron Head. There's still lots of options you could go to, like a Azumarill or like Dondozo at that point, or even Iron Treads when the attack is lower. It's not that threatening. It's not a big deal if they do, but they're risking so much by staying in. It's such a weighted risk-reward scenario if the King Gambit decides to stay in. If they stay in, they get maybe, or they Sucker Punch, they get maybe 25-30% on one of these Pokemon here. But if they stay in, they're losing most, if not all, of their HP to an Earthquake here. Probably not all. King Gambit's also ridiculously tanky. So there's no, like, the risk reward is so skewed. You're not going to waste that, you know, this early in the game. So you swap out, just that to do that. You swap out to Enamorus, get the U-turn, and now you've created momentum for your team. You look at your team, you look at your opponent's team. Normally Magearna would be the big bad wall breaker you want to do the most damage with. But there's 3 steel types, a poison type, and Heatran, who's a great answer to Floor Cannon. So looking at your team, you realize the most valuable Pokemon is most definitely going to be Azumarill. There's no answer for it. Every time it clicks Liquidation, it's going to be claiming a kill pretty much. So your opponent, there's no way they're going to their ground type Landorus-Therian on Magearna here. It's way too risky. Once again, risk reward. Yes, you come in and get Earthquake and come in on a Volt Switch and like, haha, I got you. You're not going to be getting that much long term. Whereas if you guess wrong and you eat a Floor Cannon instead, it's such like you're down a whole Pokemon. It's such a skewed risk reward there. So gotta go to Heatran, expecting the Floor Cannon. Just 25% because Specs Magearna is insane. And now you get a Azumarill in. It's all momentum that was generated by Pokemon like Landorus, to a lesser extent, I guess, Magearna, being bulky, coming in, being threatening. You know, a choice Specs Magearna actually in this case is an example of being an offensive pivot too, because it comes in, it's threatening, it's forcing a swap, and then it pivots out anyways until you can get the most optimal matchup in, like this Azumarill, and there is no answer for it here, right? So we are going to play a game. With all that said, it's a long rant on why Landorus is still not as good as ever. I was about to say that. That's completely wrong. It's not as good as ever, but there's always going to be a role for it because these offensive pivots and these Intimidate utility is always going to be open in a world like this. Oh, it took over my chat there, Calcdex. I mean, all right. So, okay, we're going to go into it here. We do really fear Ursaluna, Cocaine Bear right there. We do have a little bit of plays we can do between the normal types on Dragapult and the ground type attacks going to Landorus here. Dondozo's okay against it too, but that's gonna be the #1 threat for sure. We're also pretty scared of Dragapult. Once again, we have answers in the sense of like Fairy type and we don't have a normal type. I'm full of it. So actually, Shadow Balls from you are gonna be super threatening. We keep an eye out on that. Great Task will be pretty limited by our Landorus here, which is great. Golden Goat, the dual Ghost Shadow Ball thing here, that's super threatening. This kind of, based on the structure of this team, makes me think it could be a Dragon Dance Dragapult 2, or a more physical one, going for Phantom Force, which would actually be good for us because it's easier to play around, honestly. Although Phantom Force is interesting because it kind of, I'm gassing up Landorus this whole video. It's not great because Landorus normally comes in on the physical attack and lowers the Intimidate, but if it's in the Phantom zone, then it probably won't hit us as hard, right? Or it'll dodge the Intimidate. So that's really interesting. And Rotom Wash is also not a very clean matchup for our 2 ground types here too. So this will be a tough game based on matchups on what I'm seeing right now. In terms of leads, I think we'll probably see one of these two, but certainly Magearna and Great Tusk are possible. Keeping that in mind, I like Landorus, good matchup, fine matchup, and good matchup. So we're gonna go with our Landorus right at the gates here. It's a clear body Dragon Bolt, kind of confirming in my mind that it is a offensive variant. I am going to, I'll U-turn here. The Reflect, okay, so they're actually just a HO team full out here. This could be a Trick Room team if that's the case, Ursaluna plus Magearna, you see that, plus screens. An alarm bar will start to go off for sure. Could also just be like, you know, Magearna is, there's talks about banning Light Clay because Magearna is so good at abusing it right now. To a lesser extent, Ursaluna is too. So definitely a threat. We got a Banded Azumarill who could do okay with it. Dondozo is interesting. I like our own Magearna here, to be honest. Our own Dragapult is Phantom Force, like I mentioned, so that's not great. So we're gonna have to go to you. Not a lot of great plays. We're gonna let the Light Screen Note go up for free here. These things are actually running all that curse nowadays, these setup Dragapults, which is really interesting because you do actually want to force a killing yourself. To, again, we're talking about momentum a lot in this video to generate momentum for your team. Golden Go comes in. We can learn a little bit about it. No, we can't because we get that off. That's a bit sucky for us. I don't love Iron Tread swapping right now. We're going to go to... It's gotta be Iron Treads right now, honestly. It sucks. They're gonna trick us. Not ideal. I do want Stealth Rocks up still. I also don't love Calctex here because I want to be able to review the previous plays that happened. We can just restart this. So I could probably zoom out of this a little bit. I apologize if that's too zoomed in. No, I think it's fine. Okay, so we get Scarfed. I'm going to go for the Earthquake right here. They get Dragapult. Is a measly 26%. Go back to Lando then. I think I could probably make this guy Assault Vest. Don't need rocks. Yeah, that's what it should be. This is a team I mostly got a lot of inspiration from. Great Expectations. Shout out to them. Great player. We're going to go to Assault Vest here. Get rid of Stealth Rocks and go for probably Iron Head or Knockoff. I guess we're just gassing up Knockoff a lot. That should be the play. Okay. That gives us a lot more on our team. Great. Okay. Because I'm looking at the Shadow Ball stuff on this team. Like, what are we going to do here? We're doomed. Bucky Helmet doing a bit more chip on Dragapult. We're down bad right now. This might look kind of like an even game, but with screens, and they're going to get a bit of momentum right here. This is not a good look. If they go to Magearna, I'm for sure worried about a... Look, it's Ursaluna. Not much less threatening for sure. Earthquake is a 5-hit KO right now. Holy crap. These things can also Swords Dance. I don't think it's necessary ever, if we're being honest. So let's... It's 50-50. You know, that's the thing why Ursaluna is so hated right now. It's a 50-50. I can either Earthquake, assuming they go for an Earthquake, or I can go to Dragapult and something else. There is no correct answer objectively right here. I am going to... I'll do... Okay. Turn to water. I'm going to go to Dragapult. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It would suck. They do Swords Dance, actually. Okay, we can do a lot of damage because Infiltrator means we ignore screens, unless I'm mistaken. Let me just double check that. Yeah. That's pretty great. I could also Phantom Force, honestly, and wait, just burn turns on my opponent's Reflect and shit like that. That's not bad either. But I think I just got to let this guy go, sadly. We do get a crit. If we got a second one, that'd be hilarious. We did not. They're going to kill us with Headlong Rush. Sorry, I skipped the animation there. That was bad of me. Landorus should be able to kill now. That is the case. Can he kill with a U-turn? He can. That's pretty cool because Headlong Rush is going to lower their... I misclicked. You big idiot. Kill with reps. I have to Earthquake, and now they're going to free Rotom Wash play. Man, I could have U-turned on Landorus and generated so much momentum for myself right there and really demonstrated what I was gassing up lately. Do a stupid play. Get the Volt Switch. Oh, never mind. Okay, we'll go to Maggie here. Are we on a Volt Switch now? No, okay, we don't care about the Wisp here. I'm gonna Floor Cannon. 57. It's fine. Giving this behind a screen. Yeah, that was a bad play early on. I'm pretty upset with myself, of course. We're gonna go to Lando here. This thing does carry Ice Spinner. That's another, you know, feather in the cap, of course, of Great Tusk over Landorus. Who do you go to here if you're my opponent? Maybe Rotom. Dragapult. I'll taunt so you can get up 2 screens. Can't stop the Reflect from going up. Earthquake means you're a little bit lower. If we see Rotom again, that'd be interesting. Fair enough. Rotom should be faster. I'm going to go to my Magearna here, which is going to be pretty low after Hydro Pump. That's not great at all. That's not great at all. I can't do much. Protect there. Yeah, we're kind of behind the 8 ball this game. We'll go to Dazo here. If they Volt Switch, so be it. It's not doing too much this game either, honestly. We have Rest on it too. Body Press, which will not kill because we're going to swap out and crit us to boot. That's the thing. Probably Golden Go here. We'll see. At least we got Rocks. Remember to keep Rocks up. That helps us a little bit. Golden Go's to play. We're going to sack Mag. Beta should sack you. Liquidation's doing nothing though. Ugh. Not a great start. Okay, we're going to go to our Iron Treads here. This time we're going to... It's this Rotom. Man, these Earthquakes are doing nothing with it. I'm going to Volt Switch out. Which of our offense is dependent on Dragon Ball in this bulky offense team? So I'm going to sack it just to hurt the Ursaluna really is tough. Go for Speed Type for sure, depending on what they are. Air Balloon suggests they're more defensive. I kind of like that play. I'm going to go to Landorus here. Hopefully force a swap. I'll go for a U-turn. If I'm wrong, I still got Iron Treads here. Try to get the kill on Rotom finally. Kind of demonstrate a little bit more with our team here. Great, we're gonna get Iron Treads here. Things are looking up a little bit better because Landorus completely walls Great Tusk. Magearna is super scary, no doubt. Same with Golden Go, but these two are not very threatening anymore. That's awesome news for us. We'll Volt Switch out here as they go for something else. We'll get Landorus back in again. We can't stop any screens from going up, so I don't want them to curse me, so I think I have to kill. I was debating just like stealth rocking, honestly, and burning a couple turns. I don't think that's the correct play. Here comes Tusk. Are you going to set up on me? She's going to Rapid Spin. I'm going to taunt. They can't do anything beyond the Rapid Spin. Then we'll stealth rock. Knock off there. So if they knock off again, we can remove the Scarf from our Iron Treads here. They Rapid Spin. I'll go back to Lando, so I'm not taking anything. Plus the Earthquake is at the question. I'll fish for another knockoff removal. Great, we get it that time. And now this is a very obvious read right now from Landorus-Therian, but I don't care. At this point, you're going to be solo attack. It doesn't matter to me. Yeah, great. Plus your defense is lowered too. This is going to be an easy Earthquake here. Let's see if they sack. They're going to go to Golden Go. What a misplay. Huge for us. Landorus is actually, this is a great demonstration for it so far. We're faster than you, and we have an 18% chance to kill, which is not ideal. And I still need you for Great Tusk, honestly. So we're going to go to... Aqua is also looking very interesting going forward. So we'll sack Mag. Mag was... All my Pokemon are really good right now. You can make a case for any of them. Oh, so you are. Okay. Not too surprising, ultimately. Iron Treads. Iron Head. Earthquake's going to do great stuff here no matter what. 42%, even from an uninvested Air Balloon Magearna is insane. We get a crit on that, which didn't matter. Pretty nice. Ursaluna has 2 turns to do Chaos, but I think we should be able to take it from there, especially with an Aqua Jet Azu. I'll sack Mag here. This is a good time for it. No point in going for the Intimidate on Landorus. Not too important. Although, no, your Terra Water. I totally neglected that. But with Band, we still get the kill. That's nice. Yeah, okay. So we'll go for this. Aqua Jet. Even Terra Water if I'm really scared. And we get the W there. Very nice. We are going to try to get one more, I guess. Not a lot of games this one. This is more of an explanatory live than it was trying to go for gameplay per se, but that's fine. We're going to get this funky, very Hisuian flavored hyper offense, I'm guessing, by the looks of things here. If that's the case, I don't actually really like Glamora at all on this team. That's a fact. But we'll go Iron Tread. That's actually not terrible. Against Hisui Electrode. I'll just go for the knock right here. With the Salt Vest, it still does that much, huh? You must be Specs. Yeah, okay. That crazy pills there. I don't think we'll see a Volt Switch right here. Do you have a ground type? You don't. So I'm very comfortable going to my Begear and going for a Volt Switch after this. Awesome news. Honestly, wait, why are you Terra Steel? That was I put this in wrong. You should be Terra Fairy 10 times over. I think we are going to... I'm just wondering if I should talk myself into a Floor Cannon, because I don't think you're going to you. I think we're going to see a Moongus. So I'll Volt Switch if that's the case. Needs to be an Electro, doing good damage, honestly. Mini Regieleki with that speed tier. This is a tough turn for them. Like, there's lots of different plays you can make. I think Amoonguss makes the most sense if you're afraid of... Corviknight's too risky if you're afraid of Floor Cannon. See Arcanine, who's going to take a ton here instead. This is a great situation for Landorus once again. Even Choice Banded Head Smash. It is doing a lot, honestly. But if they're banded, then I can always pivot out to a Steel type. In comes Rotom. For sure. We don't love Rotom, frankly. But I'll go to Mag if they both turn immediately. Fine. Damn. That must be Specs. Or for some sort of offensive shit. I'm going to pivot out. If you are against Dundaza, you're going to be expecting... You're going to go to one of your grass types, I think, for sure there. In which case, we're going to go to... Dragapult. Just also find a Rotom, to be honest. That is less than I thought. Do I want a Terra? No, Terra is still not going to do it. Okay, so we'll U-turn out. We'll find a good target for the Spore that's incoming. I guess if they're afraid of Choice Specs Flamethrower, they should stand. 38. That's pretty good, though. Mag's low. You can eat the... or... That's fine. I don't think we'll see a foul play here. Maybe a... Yeah, that makes sense. Dragon Dart's still not going to kill, huh? Don't see a great answer for Dragon Darts on this team besides Corviknight. So I think I'm willing to burn this early. Oh, you weren't that physically invested at all. I didn't need to do that. But, you know, better safe than sorry. Colmora, if it comes in, I'm totally taking the kill. If you see Electrode, I don't think you threaten me. We resist both of your stabs. Unless you're Terra Ice like that Regieleki like I joked about. But even then you lost Choice Specs. You're not that strong. I'm going to see a forfeit there. That's kind of short. Let's get one more. We'll get one more. No, you know what? No, that's fine. I think we demonstrated enough that Landorus can still hang. Many people, myself certainly, including day one, as a huge hater. I thought this Pokemon was going to fall off completely. But in time, I've used it and I realized some of the core tenets that made Landorus so good are still there. It's just all the cherry on top that made Landorus ridiculous, that put it over from being like a solid OU mon to being like, holy shit, this is ridiculous, are gone. A good comparison, I think, would be like Toxapex. Like Toxapex, what makes Toxapex fantastic is at a core level, it's still the same. Haze, Regenerator, defensive typing, defensive stats, recover, all that shit is still there, but you just lose that little cherry on top, like excellence without Scald burns, right? That's how I see Landorus, where it's frankly being balanced. It's regressed to the mean, honestly, and it's in a much better spot for the metagame. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you next time. Take it easy.